Welcome. I'm Bill Davis, and on behalf of the entire Office Hours team, I get to say welcome to Daily Show 1702. This is the place we answer your tech questions live 7 days a week. Let's get right to those questions. Our reader today is Courtney Gooden in Hollywood. Courtney, what do we have on tap for today?
Well, thank you, Bill. First up is from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida. And he asked, Obsbot Talent Switcher has released multiple PTZ Tail cameras, and he's using those into a touchscreen switcher. Super compact and useful or not?
Samuel Nordvik in Norway is going to start us off this morning. Samuel?
Yeah, well, it depends, but what this is a product like the MageWell Director or the YOLO Box also makes a similar product. It's like for connecting webcams into a small compact streaming box. And also what Obsbot has done here is they've gone PTZ controls. So if you're heavily invested into the Obsbot ecosystem, then maybe it makes sense. But the interesting thing here I see is that it's exactly the same ports as the MageWell Director, so maybe they're licensing it from them. So unless you're heavily invested into Obsbot, then I don't think it makes too much sense.
Alex, good to have you back. Welcome.
Good to be back. Interface is a big deal, and so when you're trying to do live shows, I think that there is an argument for this. Now, the other thing that I will say is that you look at this picture and it shows all these cameras. You can't plug all four of those cameras into that into that controller. It's much more limited than that. If you actually if you dig into it, it's only a couple cameras. I think it's only two or maybe three cameras, the way they have it set up. It's a little, and two of them are HDMI, one of them is a USB. So it's not as flexible as it looks in their marketing. I think the problem really is that you think that you want this, and it's very small, and I can fit it in a backpack, and I can pull it out. But when you start dealing with a little screen and you're trying to do a live show, it's really hard to do that well. And I think that most people will either grow out of it or their show becomes very limited based on what it can do. And so I think that I can see where they're going with it. I, to be honest, would rather use a software switcher somewhere on a laptop or an M4 or a Mac Mini or something else like that than I would, or PC with vMix or whatever you're going to use. I would probably use that before I use this. And I still, for the kind of things that they're showing, the kitchen stuff and everything else, I've done with an ATEM and been really happy with it. So I think I wasn't sold on. I get the whole PTZ control, and that's useful. I'd want to see what kind of SDK they had so that you could possibly do something that's beyond that for me to even consider it. I just think that interface will feel very cramped. And again, I think it calls to creators who don't know what they could have, and they start getting this and they may find that it's not, what'll happen again is they'll either get tired of it or their whole show will be built in this little box because of what that system does. So I think I'm not that excited about it.
There you go. Next question.
Next one comes in from Danny Grizzly, I guess, or maybe it's Grizel, and in Longview, Texas. Danny says, I've got thousands of dollars worth of Sennheiser 600 megahertz wireless mics that are now illegal to use in the United States. What should I do with them?
Oh, Danny, that's a conundrum I've faced before. Craig Kadoki, start us off.
So when they first started changing the bandwidth and selling everything off, there was some ability to send them back to the manufacturer and get credit for it. I think that's all gone now. The best thing that I would suggest is find somebody in a different country that's still legal that you can either sell to or ideally donate to somebody that's doing work in those countries that needs it, like a school or aid programs, anything that can make use of them. I don't think you're going to be able to get much out of them otherwise.
Yeah, I think I've run into the same thing. During the last big bandwidth sell-off, I had some old Sony units that were fabulous and worked really well, but they got deprecated because we couldn't use them in the U.S. anymore, and that's exactly what I did. Thankfully, shows like Office Hours, we have an international audience, so somebody knows. So I guess if somebody has a use for them, maybe you'll get a ping here. Alex, you wanted to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I'm going to say something political, but only about frequencies, is that this was a real theft. Like this is a theft from average people running their the FCC should be ashamed of themselves, and the government should be ashamed of itself for what it did here. These are millions of dollars of hardware that was done by average people, churches, individuals, and everything else. And the people who paid for that bandwidth should have paid for at retail the replacement of all of that hardware. That should be part of taking away the frequencies. It is unconscionable what they did. They cost hundreds of millions of dollars to individual people because they could, and we should remember that the next time the government says they want to take away more frequencies, because we need to be ready to get up on X and all these other things and make sure that, there's some heat applied to the fact that, I just want to make sure we're all clear that this isn't just something that just happened. The government sold it off for money, and they sold it for billions of dollars. And to replace all this hardware would have cost hundreds of millions, to do it. And it would have been 10% of the cost over top of what they paid for, what T-Mobile and others people's paid for this. And the government should, if they're going to take something away from average people, they should give them at retail. It would have been the biggest boom for this industry ever. Electrosonic and all these other folks would have been able to sell. It would have been the biggest year ever, and it would have been great for everyone at the cost of a cell company. Screw those guys. So that they were thieves. This was a theft. And the government should. We just need to make sure that anytime more frequencies are up there, we should be complaining. We are in the media, and as we grow, we should be complaining and embarrassing them. And every time this question comes up, I'm going to say the same thing. This was a theft, and it shouldn't happen again. Anyway, that's it. That's all I got.
And I'm just going to note that during that, I was watching the panel. There was a lot of nodding, and I think all these professionals, even if we had the money to replace things, felt the same way. We know a lot of people in the industry.
It's easy to just say, they took it, they took things. Yeah. But I just know people with churches that are still trying to figure this out. Like they don't have, right. They spent $5,000 on great wireless that they can't use anymore, and now they got to go find another $5,000. And it wasn't just by accident, and it wasn't because it was needed. It was for money. It was so that the government could generate money from these cell phones. And it's not just the expense is not just this. They're making all the airlines change what they're doing for 5G. It is a bunch of BS. They're pushing all this cost off to other people. Anybody buying that spectrum should be accountable to pay everyone that they're displacing at retail. You can take something in and say, this is what I paid for it, and this is what the retail price was, and I get a voucher for that so that I can pay that off. That should be part and parcel with buying the frequencies.
Courtney Gooden wants to weigh in on this. Courtney?
Not to mention all the television studios that have to themselves.
It's hundreds of millions of dollars of theft. I just want to make sure we're clear. They stole hundreds of millions of dollars by selling those frequencies and not replacing them.
Jason Bache?
So what you could do? Sorry,
Go ahead, Courtney. You had the floor, so come back.
Maybe you could sell your equipment to Mickey or someone in a foreign country who doesn't have the restrictions on that particular segment of.
Mickey had a big smile on his face.
If it's taking up room on your shelf, you can just send it to me. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Jason Bache.
I once sent Mickey 2 pounds of coffee, and it cost a lot more than the coffee. We'll put it that way. It only took 2 months. Think of it this way. We have individual property rights in this country, which means if they want to build a road through your land, they have to compensate you fairly for the land.
Yeah.
The airwaves in this country belong to the American people. That's kind of the purpose. And to that end, if you're going to take something away, it's the same as building a highway through my backyard.
So I think there's a certain consensus among the panel of professionals here about what this was all about. Let's move on to our next question.
From Sean Johnson in New York. The question is, I loaded Zoom ISO today on a Mac, and I've been using it every day for months, and it wouldn't run and gave me this error, failed to parse JSON response from SDK authentication with error. Any ideas about how to fix this?
Courtney, you raised your hand on this one. Do you have a thought?
Yes, this is a JavaScript error from the server dealing with the authentication handshake that comes in with the beginning. So I would make sure that you've got the latest version of Zoom ISO. So check that for an update. And you might try it again. You may get a different authentication server. It could be just a bad Ethernet connection or a bad network connection that garbled that handshake transmission from the server during the authentication of sending data back and forth to shake hands. I don't know if you could fix it unless you're a programmer and have access to the original code.
Alex, your thoughts?
You need to install the new version. So you probably have an older version. You should always keep up. There's every quarter Zoom updates their Zoom ISO. You want to stay on that minimum version. You don't have to get aggressive and go to the newest version, but there's a minimum version there that you have to that you should keep up with. The next cutoff is, I think, in December, but definitely keep up to date with Zoom ISO. Every time something goes wrong in Zoom ISO, the first thing to do is to update it. So to get it to work, I think that you'll find that fixes the problem.
Next question.
From Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I need to mic an ensemble for a musical, Les Mis. The set will be a 3-sided piece, about 9 feet high. Should I mount mics under the overhand or hang the mics for large ensemble pieces, or maybe both? Thanks.
Well, one inflexible rule is distance from the mic to the sound source is always one of the critical factors in there. So I think whenever I look at any kind of miking situation, I'm trying to get my mics as close to the sweet spot as possible, close to that source. Now, with a choir, that's usually spread out. There are choir mics designed to specifically do this, and overhanging mics. I know Crown, sure, a lot of people make those choir mics specifically to do that. Alex and Mickey are both going to weigh in on this. Alex, dive in.
I'll let Mickey jump into this one.
Yeah, Mickey's one of our sound pros here. Mickey, what do you think?
Musicals or theater isn't my forte, but as Bill Davis mentioned, the closer you can get the mics to the source of the sound, the better. So this would vary depending on the exact geometry and also blocking of your talent of the ensemble. Just off the top of my head, there might be a chance that placing it lower might mean bodies would be covering up the pick up to the performers that are at the upstage portion of your area. So perhaps hanging them might give you a clearer line of sight to each and every performer.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, and there's a lot of questions I would have about what you're basically miking it for. Is it for sound reinforcement, so there's a live audience can hear all the performers, or is it for transmission? Is it for streaming? Will your mics be fed into the PA? That's a good question. So you need to really know all of that stuff to choose the right position. Open overhead mics will work fine. You have to control and make sure that the speakers are all out in front of them if they're going to be fed into PA speakers for the audience. And just bear in mind that if there's a lot of moving stage equipment during that show, things rolling onto stage, things rolling off, you got to make sure that you're carefully mixing that stuff so the overhead mics that may be miking that ensemble choir, they're in one position, are not turned up while they're rolling where they're doing a scene change. Also, PZM microphones a lot of times have been used in the front of the stage to mic an ensemble. Although, you got to deal with foot traffic there because it's going to pick up clunky shoes. Make sure the performers all wear pads on their shoes so they don't stomp around on the stage interfering with the microphones. Let's see, what else? And if you can do wireless mics, that may be a lot of wireless mics to manage. That may be on your budget, but a lavalier on the leads would be a handy thing to do to make sure that you get them clearly, and then group mic the chorus with a couple of highly directional, short shotguns, perhaps hung overhead.
Craig Kadoki.
Just a couple things about hanging mics. One of the things that I worry about with this is talks about things around it and hard surfaces that might be an issue, so you have to watch out for that. I'd also be sensitive to or want to make sure that if there's any moving light, if you're hanging from a fly system from overhead pipes with lights on them, if there's moving lights or scrollers or anything else, you're going to get a lot of noise off of those. And remember, if you're using shotguns for that, there is quite a lobe off the back of most shotguns.
Yeah, I've experienced that a lot, even with my voiceover work. You have to be careful about the back of the mic and where it's pointed. I will also say from my early theatrical adventures, and I did a lot of stuff in high school and beyond in theater, you never know whether a set is going to interfere with sound or not. The traditional flats, theatrical flats, were just 2x2s with a muslin covering over them. I don't know whether they've moved on to different kinds of technology for that, but wherever you place your mic, you're going to find out whether being behind a set or in front of a set piece or something like that is going to impact the sound. So I think one rule that you can always pay attention to is mock it up, set it up, listen, and you will figure out whether, hey, if we just fly these mics 1 foot lower, it's better, or if we fly them 1 foot higher, they can hear around a set piece that might be blocking sound. So I think this is an experiential kind of thing. You just got to try it and see what works best. Hope that helped. Zach, next question.
Comes in from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida. How do you typically incorporate a sign language interpreter into your video compositions with a panel and single speakers?
Alex Lindsay is going to help us out here. Alex.
It depends. so it depends on what you're doing. Single speaker, it's a pretty common way to handle a single speaker. Is you're going to have a screen here like this, and you're going to put your interpreter to the side. The people will. There are, the old-fashioned way to do this is to put the person down here below, and you still can do that. One thing that we find that adds a little bit of value. I don't think I have a show that I can show that we do this, but we put them in front of a green screen, and then we give them a hard background just under their head. So if you think about a person here that's here, and we give them kind of a hard background like this, and then we key them here, it just looks nice. It looks nice. You want to make sure that the background supports that. It's not too complicated, but it is nice to have someone nicely keyed, not badly keyed, but nicely keyed. Like we're talking about Ultimat and 4K down to 1080p and really, really high quality key. You want to make sure that it looks great and they're lit well, and then you have to design the set a little bit so that they stand out a little bit so that it just works. But inside of that environment, and what we do is the hard area behind them protects their hands. So wherever their hands are, they're not being keyed. It's just the top of their head. There's something about the top of their head kind of coming out of the frame that I think works really nicely. Mickey's showing something that we did. We did this for. Man, it's funny how far sets go. Anyway, so we like the old set. My old set. But if you what you can see here is that's a standard framing for a single person who is going to be doing. And we do that a lot. Now, a lot of times, like what Apple has done is they'll do this kind of framing, but they'll do it as a separate link. So they'll say, if you want to have the accessibility link, click here. So rather than having everybody have to watch that, because if you don't need it, it makes the whole screen smaller. So in a lot of ways, what we do is we have it be give access. That way, the big thing is that you kind of when you try to solve both problems, the one for the people watching and the people and the folks that need to see sign language, neither one is as good as they could be. And so what you do is by extending that out, you can make the sign language version very nice and still have the folks who don't need sign language be able to see it. And so I think Apple has picked the best option. And I will say that Apple has probably taken it further than anyone else. It's a really nice background. The interpreters are really well dressed. That's an important piece of this puzzle to look nice. A lot of times with interpreters, when we did them online, they weren't as good. We spend a lot of time building an interpreter location if we're going to do it live, or if we're going to do it over Zoom. A lot of times we'll even send them things because a lot of times they won't have what we need them to have to look as good as the show that we want them to have there. So those are the kind of things to think about. But really think about taking full advantage. It's just an issue of respect if you're going to do something for a large show, is to really light and prepare for that interpreter to be looking as good as they possibly can. It's just the same as us sounding good with a mic. It's them being well lit, well framed, and put in there. So now for most of the time, when we incorporate a panel, we still have the same interpreter, try to keep up with everybody. Now remember, you're swapping interpreters oftentimes if you're doing a live show every 20 minutes. It's just that mentally they can't keep up for longer than that. I mean, they can, but you're not going to get the same quality, and it's pretty rough on the interpreter to keep on doing that for longer than 20 minutes. So we typically swap every 20 minutes for that. So you have to be prepared for that to happen as well. In a perfect situation, you are having two interpreters with two stations, either two Zoom locations or two stations, on set, so that you're literally cutting from one camera to the other, and you can find a place to do that. So that's what you want to think about there. In some cases, we've had two interpreters, so that there's a host and someone being interviewed. We might have two interpreters doing those things because it allows for a little back and forth, and we stack them on top of each other on the side. That's not super common, but it is something that we have done in the past. So those are some things to think about how to deal with live interpretation for sign.
And just hats off to the interpreter community. I saw on YouTube maybe 6 months ago a young woman doing the interpreting, and there was a heavy metal performance, and she was so into it. And it was just one of the most charming things I ever saw. It really brought the feeling of what she was interpreting to the audience. The people who do that work are just stunning.
The shot that I didn't get, which was the funniest shot I had ever seen of an interpreter, was I was at Coachella, and I was in the camera area, which is right up against the stage, and I don't know why I didn't shoot. I was shooting other things. I was working on other things, and I looked over. I said, "Oh, I got to shoot that," and then it was gone, right? But it was Pharrell was up there singing, and he's just going at it, doing old Neptunes. So when he takes his hat off, he goes from being the pop Pharrell to the Neptunes Pharrell. And he's just going at it. And there's this woman with kind of a Midwestern hairstyle, this white woman with just and she knows every song, and she's just like doing the whole thing. And I was like, and I had a shot there, and it was like I bumped around a little bit, so I didn't take the video because I should have. It would have had 20 million views because it was the most. It was him in the foreground on the thing, and her. I had the whole thing, and I just couldn't get. I kept on getting jostled, and I figured, I'll find a better spot, and then I never did, and just I still regret that every time someone talks about sign language, but it was. You're right that people who do it are amazing. The other one on TikTok, there is she calls herself the signing chick, and she lost her hearing when she was like 30, so she speaks, and she teaches you sign language, and she teaches you important things like I've learned from her how to say not my monkey, not my circus. so anyway,
doing the important work. That's awesome. Courtney, you wanted to weigh in on this?
Well, when you brought up that sign language person for heavy metal, I wonder if there's a way. We know that sign language uses their face to indicate, to give the emphasis and expression for what the words that they're signing. If they're doing heavy metal, do they change their signs for the volume?
Absolutely. She was so totally into it, and you could tell
really
whether she was a fan or not. Her performance was an absolute reflection of the band. It was something like Metallica, so that is not gentle and light. So her signing was the farthest from that. It was just charming is the best word I can. It's like she's really doing her job because she's bringing not just the technical parts of how to understand the words they're singing. She's bringing the whole performance to life. So it's impressed me, and it's stuck in my head forever. So very cool. Let's move on. Next question
from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. He says, SmallHD releases PageOS 6 with new features and a revamped interface available for free. Download it at https://downloads.smallhd.com. And what are its uses?
Alex Lindsay, dive in.
It was a pretty incremental update. I mean, the things that I think that are interesting is that it now allows some tally through GPIO. It also allows for multiplexed SDI, so 2SI and quad 3G inputs for the monitors that support that. So those are the things that I think are the biggest things that stood out for me. And of course, they've made some interface adjustments. So there you go.
Courtney Gooden.
And I don't have SmallHD, so I don't know if this was they listed on their webpage, but a fleet control app, which is an app that you can load that you can control multiple monitors from just one with so that you can get them all in sync with the same settings and the same ones. And they operate over Wi-Fi now and talk to each other, supposedly.
Let's go to our next question.
Next one comes in from Travis in Western Australia. I recently had my first experience of calling and switching a live multicam sporting event with cam ops in one ear and program feed with commentary in the other. Tips for managing the brain gymnastics and staying focused.
Brain gymnastics is a good definition in my experience. Mickey McAchore is going to start us off here. Mickey?
Yeah, first thing, congratulations. I think number one would be just practice. Keep on doing it. You get used to the flow of everything. You get used to working with different people and on different productions. Just keep on doing it. Volunteer for, school sports sports matches, or say your house of worship. Just keep on practicing. Another thing, like, to continue that practicing, I don't know if you're a freelancer or if you are in-house at a production house or something. But say if you're a freelancer, see if you can work for other people, work for other productions. I know NEP has a facility or has trucks in Australia. See if you can maybe perhaps apprentice or intern or take up a technical position in one of their trucks, in one of their broadcasts. See how the people that do it at the highest level, those that have a live viewership in the millions or in the hundreds of thousands, see how, like, I know rugby and cricket are big in Australia. See how they do it at that level of production. And again, practice.
Alex Lindsay.
And I'm assuming when you say that you're the comm ops, you're hearing the show calling, because as Jeff Keithley said, if a camera operator is talking too much, there's something wrong. A lot of times we don't even give them mics. So, like you'll see them every once in a while. If you see a pre-show, you'll see a camera going up and down or back and forth. That's yes and no without, talking. We do it. I mean, the problem really with giving camera operators mics is that and allowing them to talk a lot is that they'll chit chat throughout the show and make sometimes horrible comments. So that it can be distracting to do that. So I don't know how much you're hearing from the camera ops. You shouldn't be hearing very much. But if in general, I know some audio engineers that will pan multiple different channels to different parts of their, 5 or 6 different pan positions for different people. And like everything else, when you start driving a car, everything's overwhelming. And after a while, you're, eating a burger and talking on the phone and all things you shouldn't do, thinking that it's like because your body's doing everything automatically and you're paying attention. Your body's able to kind of move a lot of that thing that you're conscious to the subconscious to keep on operating. So I think that in this case, what'll happen, exactly what Mickey talked about. You just got to do it a lot. You got to hear comms a lot. You got to work on it, and you should be looking for every opportunity that you can find to experiment, and to figure out and to get that experience. There's nothing better, as Mickey said, than getting into a truck or being a PA or anybody that's in an assisting position, whatever you can get in a larger production so that you can understand scale. I think a lot of people who do live work don't really understand what it really looks like at a broadcast level. And the more experience you can get with that, and then just the more of doing it yourself. The great thing about it is nowadays the entry to this is very low, and very, and much easier to do. So anyway, so I would highly recommend continuing down that path.
Cordy Gooden.
Yeah, I face this all the time working as a teleprompter operator, where I have to have comms in one ear and I have to have program in the other, because I have to listen very intently to the person speaking on the air, because I have to keep the teleprompter in perfect sync with them. So basically what I do is I always put the program a little bit louder than the comms. I dial the comms down and I listen for my name or someone screaming the word tele, and that gets my attention. But the rest of the time I keep the primary thing that I need to listen to a little bit louder and in one ear, and everybody else comms in the other ear. And your brain can eventually kind of tune out what you're not listening to and just listen for subtle cues. It's hard for the brain to process 2 streams of language, either visually or audio-wise, at the same time. and discriminate between the two. It's hard to pay attention to two different things at the same time. So you got to kind of spot listen. But since you're calling in this situation, you're doing more speaking than listening. So your primary listen would probably be to the talent and the people calling the sports stuff, so that you can pay attention to the switching to be pertinent to what they're talking about in your radio.
Yeah, for me, channels and party lines are critical for this. It's a process of you want as few distractions as possible if you have an IFB in your ear. And boy, I can't tell you, I've done this a few times, even with the office hours crew here. And some of the larger things that I've been lucky enough to sit in the host seat for, if I have one person on my comms who is telling me what is going on so I don't have to listen to everything at once, it is such a huge relief, because in the chair you have so many things to think about. And I remember we did one of the live shows, and Raj Chandel was my producer for that. He made my life so much better because I just had to hear one voice. I knew when it was him, and I could think about the things I needed to keep my work going well. And he gave me only what I needed when I needed it. It was such a joy. It reminded me of broadcast news. If you've never seen the old show with Holly Hunter and William Hurt, they have a set of scenes in there where she is talking to him as the producer and he's live on the air. And you get this sense of what a team can do when you really know who to listen to and how. Really makes the whole program just worlds better. And it makes everybody's jobs easier if you pay a lot of attention to this, setting up the right PLs, getting the right voices in everybody's ear, and not making everybody listen to all the chatter in the background, which can get, in my experience, way overwhelming. Jason Bass, you wanted to weigh in?
You know, I might be weird about this, but more often than not, I would rather watch a live show get called than watch that live show. Maybe it's just a testament to how my brain's wired. But at the end of the day, I actually raised my hand to say, even, on a smaller level, not 90 screens and, a whole bunch of pre-roll, our back-end crew does a really good job with this.
Amen to that, and thank you to everybody who's been a part of this. Alex, you want to dive in?
I will say I wish that people could see more of it. For an ADD person, watching a multi-view and listening to comms while the show's going on is it's way better. Like it keeps you fully saturated the whole time. Like you're just like, instead of being bored or trying to fast forward, there's no slow time. It's really worth it.
Yeah. And there's some cool things, like if you look at comms chatter for Super Bowl and things like that, you'll find some YouTube things from the big guns out there who are calling these massive shows. You can't believe the number and precision of calls being made just constantly.
The best thing is when that's the thing. And what's most interesting is listening to the comms when things aren't working. And you realize that nobody watching the show realizes anything's happening, but you can have people very upset, why didn't you sell me that? Why didn't you sell me that EBS? There's all back and forth, but the show just keeps going on, and the audience never notices that anything's happening on a big production. Most big productions, yeah.
Yeah, Mickey, you wanted to weigh in?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that. Yeah, make this whole cacophony of noises that happen in a control room just second nature, just normal to you. Stay in a control room, whether you're making coffee, whether you're calling the shots. Just keep yourself in a truck or a control room. And I just googled NEP Australia. That yes, they do have services in Australia, and here's their contact page. Reach out.
There you go, Travis. Good luck. And, this is a fascinating part of the industry. And if you can learn to do this well, you'll be a very valuable member of the production teams. If you can learn either to help organize it and set it up, or just be a part of it successfully, where you know when to speak, when not to speak, it really makes you so much more valuable as a crew member for anything. All right. We've been on this for a while. Next question.
From Ben Bedward in New Glarus, Wisconsin. The question is, local band in a small town uses Behringer XR18 as their mixer and wants to switch to in-ear monitors for the 5 members on stage. The budget is crowdfunding and a small percentage from each gig. What are some options to get sound to each person?
Mickey McAchore is going to help us out. Mickey?
So yeah, the XR18 only has 6 aux outputs in addition to the main left and right. So you wouldn't be able to provide stereo IEM mixes for each person. If you're just starting out and looking for something at a more affordable budget, I'd probably look into either the Shure PSM 300 system or the Sennheiser EW IEM G4 system. These two systems, which are very close in price, each one comes with two receivers, and each transmitter can either transmit either a single stereo feed or two mono feeds. So since the XR18 only has six aux outputs, you can create a mono mix for each musician, send two of those two mixes to each of the transmitters, and then each musician gets a body pack. You'll need 3 sets of these, and you're good to go with mono IEM mixes for each person.
Craig Kadoki.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Mickey said, but one thing, and I don't know about those particular in-ear receivers, some of the receivers that I've used, when you set it up as dual mono, you've got a volume, but then you've also got a pan pot. The pan pot allows you to take 2 separate feeds, so you could have the vocals and the band if you were being really simplistic, and each person on their pack can pan between focus, if they want more of the vocal or more of the band. It's still mono what comes out, but then you've got that ability to choose between 2 sources in your own local mix. The other thing I'd suggest is that there's a lot of several single channel or dual channel in-ear wired packs. So if you're doing a drummer, for instance, the drummer doesn't need to have a wireless. They're always going to be sitting at the drum kit. That saves you on this. You can get those for $100. Behringer makes them, a few others as well. So there's a couple more options.
Excuse me, Craig. I stepped on you there. Jason Bache.
Yeah, summing mono as from an input that is stereo is kind of the best poor man's mixer. I use the Shure that Mickey mentioned, the P3RA. Every day. It is not the best body pack I've ever had. The volume is a little squirrely, so I have to have it at a body pack or I will accidentally move the wrong way and blast or completely lose sound. That is my one major problem with it. And but in this studio, walking around my house, absolutely perfect. I'm not sure about production. I have never used this on stage. I would go more towards something higher end for that, but it does work and it's great.
Just as a quick announcement here, remember that if you're in the Mukana system in the back end, you can vote on these questions. We have quite a few questions still to get to and not that much time, so your votes definitely count today. So dive in, make your preferences known, and we will get to the next show. Next question.
All right, next question from Henry Ramos in Yonkers, New York. Any cost-effective and compact mic-to-line preamps out there?
Craig could
Sorry, say to get one or more mic into an 8-channel mixer with only 6 mic inputs.
Craig Kadoki.
Yes, there are. There are several companies like ART. I think even Behringer makes a small compact one. So that would be something to check from your local music store. The only thing that I'd want to ask about this or to check is to make sure if you're looking to add 1 or 2 into an 8-channel mixer, what are the connections for line in on the mixer? It says it's got 6 mic inputs. So if the other 2 are just a RCA stereo for an iPhone or a CD player, whatever going into it, that might not be the best thing to bring a microphone in. Also, 8-channel mixers that only have 6 mic inputs, the 2 other channels, even if they are regular single channels, rarely have full EQ or other processing on them.
Courtney Gooden.
All right. There are little boxes out there that you can find. Here's one called, I've used these guys, Art, a Clean Pro box. It's a dual channel balanced input to unbalanced output or balanced output on the back. You've got unbalanced or balanced input and outputs on both of these. They take external power, of course, and it's reasonably priced. They're not the best mic preamps. They're not the lowest power out there, and I don't think... Now, they do have 48-volt Phantom, but it's common switched for both inputs, so that'd give you 2 additional mic inputs that you could go in either with RCA, unbalanced or balanced if you have balanced inputs for those additional inputs on the mixer.
Mickey Makator.
So yeah, I am a massive fan of sound devices. I think as many people know, they have the sound devices MM1, which is a pricey little thing. At
You did say cost
looks like
effective, Mickey.
800 US per channel. Saying that, like, I have no regrets buying the MM1s I have. But if you take a look at the used market, since you're in New York, Henry, Gotham Sound is in New York, and look at this, $300 US for a used sound devices MM1. I'd go for this.
Alex Lindsay.
I used to own many of these. I have a couple left, and they are great. So I know that they're expensive, but they are the best. To do that. Yeah.
Jason, you had a comment?
Yeah, one more giant +1 for Gotham Sound. They are amazing.
Yeah. All right, you're getting good advice here. Next question.
Next one comes in from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York, asking, I've been experimenting with PTZOptics Hive, and it's been going well. Has anyone else been utilizing this for video and for audio?
Alex Lindsay.
We had them on, and it was a great session, and we are talking to them about doing some much larger tests with Hive. So stay tuned for that as we go into the new year. But we're really excited about what they're doing.
Next question.
Another one from Danny Grizzly in Longview, Texas. How does 32-bit recording impact mic choice for field recording? Specifically, when budgets force less experienced sound ops or no dedicated sound crew at all? Does dialogue versus effects?
And Courtney, you raised your hand on this early.
Well, it doesn't necessarily impact your mic choice because it records a higher dynamic range. I guess if you have a mic that can deliver a much higher dynamic range, it'll give you a little more headroom in there to go crazy and have if you're recording sound effects such as gunshots or cannon fire, it's great for that because your microphone capsule will bottom out before the recording will go into distortion. So you can use a dynamic mic which has a much higher SPL than to handle the 32-bit amplitude variations of 32-bit recording.
Mickey Makator.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Courtney there. The mic choice isn't. I wouldn't say it would be affected by the chosen recording format. We typically pick the microphone based on the pickup pattern we want, the sound signature or the frequency response that we want for the specific source. I just want to add though that in terms of what Courtney mentioned, with some effects gathering techniques, we sometimes do want distortion in there, like especially things like explosions and gunshots. Distortion adds a lot of character and makes it sound bigger. So that's a little off topic there, but yeah, microphone choice isn't really affected by the recording format.
Yeah, and I'll just notice somebody does a lot of voice work. The dynamic range thing, if you are recording with your audio, your mic volume set too low, the one thing that I would pay a little bit attention to is whether or not your microphone have decent self-noise ratings. The better microphone all tell you how much they are producing in terms of signal versus noise ratio. Even if you've got a lot of dynamic range and you can pull up those quiet sounds, if what you've recorded is a mix of a microphone's actual sound and its self-noise, you're going to be raising both of those even out of the 32-bit dynamic range. So just be careful about making sure your mics are at least decent quality. Super cheap mics can sometimes be a little iffy in that realm. Next question.
Comes in from Western Australia. Travis Morrison asks, at a recent event, we had two commentators, one on-prem, the other remote, both using Wirecast. I wanted the on-prem guy to use my ATH BPSHS1 headset, but wasn't sure how to interface it with his MacBook Air, as a headset has separate XLR and TRS connectors.
Samuel Nordvik, do you know for us?
Yeah, we use this headset quite a bit for translation, and it has a XLR and a 1/4 inch. So if you're only going to go into and out of the laptop, then as audio interface with a XLR in for the mic, and a headphone out would be sufficient. But you really want to think of what you want your commentator to hear. If you want them to hear the program audio, then perhaps it's not so easy to route it through the Mac. So if you have a mixer on site, then what we've done, we just chopped off the 1/4 inch and then put on a female XLR, soldered it on, and then we can have a lot more flexibility with routing audio to and from the headset to the mixer.
Mickey Makachor.
So yeah, as Samuel mentioned, this is a pretty standard broadcast dynamic headset, which does have a 1/4 inch and XLR at the end there. If you're looking for something simple, I'd probably look at the universal audio Apollo. You would need an audio interface to essentially get audio in and out of the computer for that bi-directional conversation there. I'm a big fan of universal audio. There's the Apollo Solo and the Apollo Twin. On the more affordable end, there's a Focusrite Scarlett Solo. If you want something in the middle, there's the SSL2 or the SSL2 Plus. They have a Mark II now, which came out a couple months ago. But if you want to add a bit more functionality, there are also announcer consoles from the likes of Studio Technologies that give you multiple circuits that you can use. One for your that goes out to the actual program, and a secondary circuit, or even with other models, an additional 2 circuits that you can use for back channel communication, so that if your talent suddenly needs to talk to the producer or the director for some reason, they have another circuit that they can talk on without that conversation going out on air.
Hope that helps. Next question.
Comes in from Tromsø, Norway. Ronnie Hofsey asks, what are the best equipment solutions for simultaneous interpretation during courses and training sessions for patients and their relatives? Would you recommend a guide system or utilizing the participants' own mobile phones? Sennheiser Mobile Connect is one.
Alex, have you faced this problem?
We mostly give people some kind of interpretation system if they're going to use it. This has gotten very complicated because a lot of the IP stuff has allowed us to bring in interpreters from somewhere else in the world. They don't even have to be there. So, we need these certain people, and we can sit there and identify people somewhere in the world that can hear it over Zoom or over other things and pipe it in. In those cases, though, we're still piping that typically into some kind of RF solution. The Sennheiser one actually looks pretty interesting. This is the Mobile Connect station. And what's interesting is you can have it standalone up to 100 people, which is probably all you need. But you can see that you can stack them up for very large audiences and have them in kind of a manager mode. They're reporting 25 milliseconds of delay, which would be fine. The interpreter delay is much higher than that, and them listening and saying something. So it seems like it's within the range. I wouldn't use it for a music concert, but for interpretation, it could work quite nicely. So that I've heard about the Sennheiser Mobile Connect, never used it, but it is a pretty interesting looking system. When you start talking about scale, it sounds like what you're talking about are a handful of people, less than 100 people. So it shouldn't be. The question is, how many languages do you have to support? Is part of the problem there. As you scale, in a lot of times for very, very large things that people are using low power FM. Sometimes it's a gray area legally that they're using it, but they do, and they can support tens of thousands of people because you just get them to buy an FM receiver that's $2 and put a headset in, and they just tell you there's a sign that tells you what to tune into for your language. And I know that some folks have gotten, I think, over 20 languages, solved that way. It's the math doing that with one antenna is extremely complicated, but it is possible.
Mickey Makachor.
Yeah, for something like this, you typically find RF based assistive listening systems. A big one is Listen Technologies. They have tiny little receivers, and you give the audience members a small pair of a small earpiece for them to listen to the interpretation. If this is a larger facility that might have a budget, you might also want to consider some sort of conferencing system. This is the Bosch DeSantis. This is like the cream of the crop in terms of systems like this. But there are a lot more affordable systems. It's essentially a wired system with a headphone jack on the side of it, and you can plug in and select which language you want to listen to. You'd find these in like large government buildings or conference centers, wherein there's a lot of different languages that have to be interpreted out.
Now, Alex, you wanted to come back in.
Yeah, and the only reason we oftentimes don't use anything that we hand to people, and we like to use things that they can either buy, like these little RF systems, or, and again, looking at these kinds of things, is getting the receivers back. So you really have to be careful. You have to have someone at the door asking for them. It's not that people are trying to steal them. They're not useful for anything. They just forget. They put them in their pocket or whatever, and then they're off to the hotel, and by the time they try to figure it out, so a lot of times we talk to people, unless you have people at the door asking every person to give them back, you'll have a loss of a couple every event.
I remember saying goodbye to my old Sony 810 receiver that transmitter that somebody walked out of a conference with.
But it's not, they're like, in these receivers, these are little belt packs, and they just forget about them. And again, it's not nefarious. It's just forgetfulness, and then not being willing to bring them back to the tent. And so, there's kind of when I got in a conversation with someone who does a lot of interpretation. I was like, why are these stations so expensive? He's like, well, we have to account for the loss. Like we're losing receivers every show.
Samuel, you wanted to sneak back in?
Yeah, another solution that we've used is Listen Everywhere. It's actually a Wi-Fi solution. So you have to have a solid Wi-Fi network for it to work. And if you don't have a lot of access points, if you have a lot of people, then you'll have dropouts. But we had a lot of problems with the first generation, but the second generation we've been using with quite good success. But you have to bring your own Wi-Fi setup, so it's not a one. The app actually works very well, but there is a little bit latency, so it's not latency free either. It's probably almost 100 milliseconds latency. Okay, Jason Beige.
Yeah, it just occurred to me this is great use number 5002 for AirTags. Your walkaway equipment is now trackable.
Oh. Little crazy glue and an air tag on the bottom of things. We're good. All right, next question.
Next one comes in from Vincent Alvarez in Bellingham, Washington. Is it possible to connect an Insta360 Link webcam from about 80 to 100 feet away for a very basic audience cover shot in a large classroom? USB-C doesn't go that far. Boss wants to try $150 J5 Create wireless video transmitter, very low budget event.
Alex Lindsay, what do you think?
I don't think that's going to work very well. They could try it. I mean, I think you're better off just putting a camera up there with Zoom. Like take an iPhone, put it on Zoom, and have it pop out the other end. You're not going to have at a low cost. You're not going to have a low latency connection. You're not going to be able to have an interaction. So if you're just looking for a picture of the classroom from somewhere else, you could get it probably from some a variety of little streaming things. IHSE USB transports is what we would probably use if we cared about it, but it would be thousands of dollars for that rig. So I don't, at $150, I don't know if you'd have a solid solution.
Courtney, real quick.
There are solutions for repeater USB cables. You can get them for around $100 on Amazon. And if they don't work, try it out. If they don't work, you can send it back. Right. This has a couple of amplifiers in line and is 100 feet long.
And I'm just the only thing I'll say is that the links themselves are incredibly tweaky. Like, they don't, I mean, I haven't been able to get anything more than 10 feet to connect. And that's like 3.2, high quality. I've bought lots of them, and 10 feet has been the maximum before the link just won't turn on. It's specific to that camera.
Mickey?
Yeah, and if you use say a fiber optic or a long USB extension, the amount of current that coming from the computer or whatever you're plugging into will not fully be able to power something like an Insta360 Link at that long a cable length. If you're playing within that budget of $150 US, it would be very difficult to get something that's in sync. But at that price range, I'd either consider getting an Obsbot Tail Air, which does have NDI, so it's made for going through a network through a long Ethernet cable, or perhaps get a little mini PC, $180 or $100 mini PC to take that USB UVC connection coming out of the Insta360 Link and turn it into an NDI signal that you can then pull in at the far end.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Aaron Cothi in St. Louis, Missouri. I've recently learned the hard way that I need to start incorporating multi-track audio recording into every event as part of a redundancy and contingency consideration. Should I rely on my M32 or invest in a standalone multi-track solution?
Craig Kadoki.
So the questions that I have are, how are the signals getting into your M32? If you're using a stage box going analog out to the desk's analog ins, the best thing to do would be to put an analog split on the stage, break that out into a standalone recorder. Something like the Joko would be a great option here. If you're going Dante, having another system on the Dante network that can do the multi-track is going to be a great solution. If everything's just going analog into the desk or going through an AES-50 snake to the desk, then the USB multi-track out of the M32 would be my option.
Alex.
Yeah, and we really like to use Dante in these areas. I generally don't, because of some past experiences, generally don't depend on the software recorder 100%. We have a Joko and we use it and we love it. so that's the Joko is an incredible solution. I've been using them for 15 years.
Mickey?
Yeah, I have to say +1 for the Joko black box recorders. They're currently, I think, the go-to for multi-track recording, like not massive multi-track recording in the thousands of channels, but if you need 64, 128, or up to 256 channels, I'd get a Joko or a stack of Jokos. But if ever you can find a secondhand Sound Devices 970, they are coveted, and even though they have been discontinued for the longest time, people do not want to sell them. They want to continue using them. But if ever you see one for sale, secondhand, get it immediately.
Next question.
Next question comes in from Longview, Texas. Danny Grizel asks, the RF venue channel on YouTube is excellent with lots of wireless fundamentals. Do any panelists have a favorite resources?
Mickey.
Yeah, RF Venue, great company. They make RF combiners, RF splitters, RF antennas. And they also put out very informative content, sticking along the lines of sort of the sound leaning side of things. There's Rob Lepop. He has really good content in terms of transport over fiber and also intercom systems. He's someone who actually knows his stuff. There's not much of that on YouTube, but this guy knows what he's doing. Gotham Sound also has amazing videos where they talk to manufacturers, they talk to sound mixers. I think this is the second time I've mentioned Gotham Sound on today's show. Gotham Sound I really like because they are a vendor of sound tools and sound equipment that is run by actual sound mixers. So they're people that I trust. Another channel that I really like is Orsa Straps. They interview sound mixers and boom operators and sound utility persons. They're great content. Again, the interviews are conducted by people who do sound, so they know what questions to ask. They're not just there to sell. They're actually curious about what people do, what their techniques are, and sort of in the vent tech side of things, there's Practical Show Tech. They've been putting out great content since the pandemic.
Craig, real quick.
The one other resource that I always like to rely on is my local dealer. I had the Sound Devices RF dealer come in and give me a demo of the new system, and the knowledge you can get from those people is unmatched.
Next question.
From Chautauqua, New York, Zach Stallsmith asks, the NFL has checked in with Netflix and has been assured that there will not be any buffering issues on Christmas Day games. Do we think this can be true, given Netflix has enough time to stress test their servers?
The important question of the day. Alex, what do you think? Will the NFL get this right?
Yeah, we've been talking about this a lot. 65 million concurrent viewers may be one of the largest ever the Olympics and YouTube TV might have more of many different things going on at one time, but we're not sure that we're not sure that anything has ever streamed that many streams ever. Like, in the end, and the failure rate was not everyone. Like, I only saw it glitch once. Like, so I got in at 5 o'clock. I only saw it glitch once. Otherwise, it was perfect HD video that I was watching the entire time. So I think that overall Netflix. What's funny is that I think Netflix had an incredible success, and they had some issues because they're in the outer edges of space. And so there was some glitches because no one is out there, or if it has, it's 1 or 2 events ever. Has happened that way. And so I think that I think we want to put that in perspective. I love the Steelers. I don't care about the Chiefs, but they're not going to get 65 million viewers like on Christmas Day. They're not going to get anywhere near that number. So I think that what's great for the NFL was that they did this fight a month before. There's definitely many things they can do to the CDN. I'm guessing they were doing things to the CDN during the show. But given a month and a half, there's definitely ways to shore it up. But it was an incredible success by Netflix. I know it got bad press, but to get to that kind of number is astronomical. I just want to make sure people understand it, because there's been a lot of bad press about it. And I'm writing an article right now. I'm probably going to put up on LinkedIn, because I just think people have lost. People who don't know what it takes to do 65 million concurrent views have lost how incredible having anybody able to watch anything do that. I think that Peter Moore said that the India versus Pakistan surpassed any concurrent viewers viewership. Maybe. Like, I'd have to see the real numbers, but 65 million people is a lot of people watching a streaming event that wasn't available on broadcast, that they could watch it somewhere else. I mean, even YouTube, the Sunday ticket is in the low millions, and so for YouTube. So we're not, millions doesn't bother me, but when you start getting over 20 million, a lot of us will start to seize up. Like, that's going to be a lot of like when someone says, we think we might have 800,000 viewers. I'm like, yeah, don't worry about that. You don't even need to schedule that with Akamai. When you go over 5 million, you start scheduling availability with Akamai. When you go over 20 million, like, that's 6 months of meetings, and so I think I think that Netflix did a great job on that. I think that they did not do a very good job in the production. I think that the audio production is probably the worst of a major event I've ever seen. So I don't want to, but the actual streaming part was a huge success.
Can you imagine the numbers if the Chiefs decide to have Taylor do a couple of songs in the intro?
I still don't think, I'll be honest with you, I still don't think it'd be over 65 million. Like, okay. That is like, people talk about lots of millions of people watching and everything else. But I just will say that if it's available in broadcast, for instance, that number will drop to 1/10. Like, so if you talk about something, but I think that a lot of us have looked at those numbers, and it's an incredible number. 65 million people watching something at one time over streaming. I mean, TV can do it because it doesn't, it's a broadcast out. It's entirely different infrastructure, but it's an incredible number. 65 million is a lot for a TV show, but it's an incredible number for streaming.
Courtney, you had a quick comment before we finish things?
Well, Alex said basically everything. Netflix is used to serving, millions of customers, but different movies at different times and different locations. But like he said, all at once, 65 million watching the same thing. They weren't quite ready for that, and it showed in their buffering. But
the only way to be ready for it is to do it.
Christmas Day is going to be multiple games in multiple locations, and everybody's going to be watching their favorite game. So it's not going to be the same problem.
Thank you for watching, one and all. We appreciate it. Our Teluk traversal today, 35,000 miles. That's 66,000 kilometers. Also equates to 275 million bananas for scale. We'll be back doing this again tomorrow. Thank you for paying attention.
I had like an hour-long conversation with someone about that.
Did you really?
About Netflix, yeah. Because I was like,
oh man, the engineering departments have to go. Whoa.
No, I think what's funny is I don't think the people at Netflix are. I mean, I think they saw it as a pretty big success. I mean, I think that it was a huge success, and the only way to know how to do, because we were talking about simulation, you can't simulate that. You can't.
Right.
a computer does not do what a human does, and humans panic in a weird way that we always have trouble.
Refresh.
Yeah, refresh.
Let me get 3
app, rebuild the app, unplug the device and plug it back in. All of those things cause incredible. And Brody said that it was, they said it was 108 million watch the stream. Yes, 108 million watch the stream, but it was 165
total,
million concurrent.
But not concurrent.
Concurrent. Like it's a huge number. Like it's a crazy number. Like anyway, and they said it's the largest ever, which probably is true.
A lot of